So last week we were talking about the banks, right? We were talking about where the banks put their money. Who would like to share? Let's open it up real quick. Some of the things that you learned, some of the things that stood out to you from these concepts here of the bank, where the bank puts their money. Who would like to kick that off?
Are you wanting us to present or just remark about things that we really liked about it?
Yeah, just things that stood out to you, things that come to your mind when we're looking at these concepts, just one thing, and we'll get different people to share.
Well, I know
I missed this presentation. I wouldn't mind hearing a quick recap, but it looks good.
Awesome. We'll definitely recap it. I think it was also recorded too, but I'll run through it. Go ahead, Shannon. What were some things that stood out to you?
So one of the things for me is how often we as a population are so dependent on the banks, because that's what we're taught is the most important thing when it comes to money, right? So we feel that we're very connected to that. Knowing that, or kind of, having that background, we forget that the banks have a purpose of their own, which is to make money, other than just to keep our money, and we think it's to keep it safe. And because they're in the money business, for me, the fact that they use tools that are available to everyone, but we don't take the time to learn that so that we can do the same, even though it's available to us. So, like here where it says bank, and how the bank uses insurance companies and those accounts to be able to make and create money for themselves, which they don't pass on to the consumer because it was in their minds their money, even though they're using our money to do that. So that was like one of the big things for me.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, that's a big point. And it's like, and people just don't know because the banks aren't going out there and educating them. And who else is going out there and educating people? Like the banks don't sit there and tell you, hey, this is where we put our money, or this is how we invest our money. I mean, we kind of have a general idea of it, but it's not something that's taught to people as a strategy that they understand or they have knowledge of, right?
Well,
so learning. Go ahead.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead, Shannon.
I was gonna say, I think what I like about this presentation in a nutshell is that it is delivering what we always talk about, financial education, that it is putting it in simple terms that are very clear. There's no legalese being thrown around that's confusing. We're not saying banks are bad. We're just saying this is how banks work. So we're not calling them robbers or bad guys or something like that. We're just letting them know the bank is a tool and how that tool works. Yeah. Awesome. And I kind of like that it is built more like this presentation comes across more like an instruction manual instead of and this is why they're awful. I like the tone of this presentation for that reason.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate that, because it's never to say like financial institutions or banks or anything like that they're wrong or they're bad. It's just to understand how they work, right? Because if we understand how they work, then we can utilize them properly. But if we don't understand how they properly work and what the actual use is, then those lines can become blurred. So very good. Anyone else from last week want to add in? Jessica, Moses, Alice, anybody want to add in your thoughts? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, in addition to what the rest have said, the education and, knowing some of the things we often assume, something that stood out to me is, to the educational component is the assumption most of us make that our money is safe, not really taking into consideration that if the bank goes under, then we stand the chance of losing everything. Yet, if we were educated enough to put the money directly by ourselves or, using these other means like insurance, and if something happened, we are likely to get our money.
That's right. Awesome. No, that's a huge thing. Thank you, Miss Alice, for bringing that up. The educational part is a really, really big deal. And becoming your own bank, because if you're utilizing these insurance products the way that we're talking about them, you can become your own bank that way. So imagine your money is growing at like a 6 to 8% every single year. But if you borrow money from yourself, let's say you're paying 1/4% or 1%, then you're now in a financially good situation because you can borrow money tax free. You can pay yourself back. You don't have to pay yourself back. So it's what's called a form of self-banking. And wealthy people have been using insurance policies because of the tax advantages, the tax exemptions, the safety, the security, and to become their own bank, you can utilize your own money and earn money off of it and borrow against yourself and pay yourself back. So now you're doing what the bank's doing, but you're doing it on your own personal level for yourself. So I think that that's a huge, huge thing. So let's recap on some of these things that we talked about. We talked a little bit about last week, the bank. So safety, that was a big one. Why do people put their money in the bank? They have a perceived perception that their money is safe. Why? FDIC insurance, $250,000. That is only if they you still have to file a claim, and it's if the bank goes under, right? That's the only way, is if the bank completely goes under. And it's Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So insurance corporations prevent banks from going under. They insure the bank to say, hey, we have the funds that if you go under, we're going to insure you and we're going to back you, right? But you still have to file a claim. Now, we talked a little bit about if a lot of banks went down, like we had over 600 banks that went down in 2008, 2009, between that period of time, between 2008 and 2015, really a lot of banks went down, over like 600 different banks. If the FDIC does not have the money to fulfill on all of their obligations, you're not getting your money, right? So if in the chance or likelihood of people saying like, oh, catastrophe happens, everything closes down, they have out, the FDIC only has a certain amount of insurance, but they have 3, 5, 10 times more money out than they have to actually back that money. So that's not something that you really want to depend on. So if you were to put your money somewhere, would you rather invest your money into banks, or would you rather invest your money into insurance companies? So why do people put their money in the bank? Well, they think that it's safe, but the bank, we all know, gives us a very low interest rate. The interest rate that they give us is this less than 1% over here. But then they go around and they loan us money, right? 18 to 20%. We have personal loans, student loans, credit cards, home loans, car loans, consumer loans, home equity loans, all these different types of loans. So now they're compounding the money that people have deposited into the bank, right? Why isn't the money safe there? Well, for every dollar that you put into the bank, or for every dollar that the bank loans out, for every dollar that they have, they can loan up to $10. So if they have $1 million of capital, that's what they actually have, they can loan 10 million. If they have 10 million, they can loan 100 million. Where insurance companies, based off of regulations, work the exact opposite. They have to have more reserves on hand than they're able to loan out. Therefore, they're more stable. So if I'm an insurance company, if I loan $1, I have $3 to back that $1. So when you're really thinking about if I was going to place my money somewhere, and this is why a lot of insurance companies do not go down. It's very, very rare that you ever hear of an insurance company going down, because insurance companies have very conservative practices, right? And then the banks put their money, so they take your money and everybody else's money, and they put it into insurance companies, because the insurance companies give them no taxes. They give them 4 to 8%. They have these rates of returns, and they're compounding the money. So we want to ask people, hey, where do we want to put our money? Into the banks, or where the banks put their money? And if you guys want to see all the further details on this, there's a recording of it where it shows me going through this whole process. I get into the detail of it. I think that it's good to know as an educational piece for yourself. Most of you on this call know so much more than everybody else that's out there, because this is not the stuff that they're teaching people in school. It's not the stuff they're teaching people in economy class and things like this. This is the stuff that a lot of this stuff I learned from being a VP within the bank. I learned how banks invest. And when I saw what happened to my parents and my dad, and in 2008, I said, man, how come we didn't know about where we could invest our money and be safe, right? So it's not that they're bad, it's just knowing how they work. So we jumped over here into taxes and how taxes are. We saw the example of what effects taxes has on the growth of your money, right? So if you're putting your money where you're getting taxed up to 30% on capital gains, if you're pulling your money out within the first year, right? So what happens in that situation is your money never is able to grow. So if you take $1 and you double that dollar 20 times, right, you would go to over $1 million. But if we apply a 30% tax rate to it, it only grows to 28,000. So I hear a lot of people, they invest in mutual fund stocks. Now, these things are not bad either, but for the majority of people, they're only investing in products where they're paying taxes and their growth is at risk. So it's about having diversification and knowing what all of your options are, right? So we look that there's a big impact or a huge impact on money. What are some of the accounts that fall into that tax now category? What does that mean? Anytime your money grows over $10, you're getting taxed, right? Anytime your money grows, you have interest, your account's made more than you're going to pay taxes on that. So tax now, you have your checking accounts, your savings accounts, stocks, mutual funds, CDs, and bonds, right? Those are all tax now products. What about tax later? Okay. You guys can shout them out. I'll start writing 401k. What else?
403B, traditional IRAs,
So IRA,
pension,
pension.
Annuities.
Okay. What else?
SSI,
Tax later. Okay. What else? SEP, right? These are all just different, like SEP IRAs.
All
have
the
the,
IRA family.
Keogh plan. Right. You have 457s, right? You guys are starting to get the point. But what are the difference with these plans? You don't get taxed on your money now, like over here, right? You get taxed on your money when? Later. What are some of the common benefits that people think about having when it comes to paying taxes on their money later? Like, why would we want to pay taxes on our money later and not now?
Because they want more money in their paycheck.
Want more money in their paycheck? Okay. What else?
you're reducing the tax liability now and deferring it to later.
Okay. So like I'm going to save now, but then pay later, right? Right. Is that a strategy?
You're saving on your taxes right now because you're lowering
Yep.
your income, but you're also saving for income that will come later. Even though there's tax later, you are getting income later on too. So it's like a forced savings account that draws interest. So you earn interest on the money as well.
Yeah. So you're earning money, right? You're earning money. So you may benefit right now from a lower tax bracket. If you're putting money there, you're making less, you're getting taxed, right? So if the amount that we're saving each year, right, is going to be less than the amount that we're paying in taxes later, then that's a good deal, right? But if we're saving money right now, we have the perception that we're saving money in taxes right now, but we're going to have to pay more in taxes later, right? Then that may not be a good deal. So the reality of this situation is, do we know if taxes are going to be more or less in the future? We don't know. Who's psychic, right? We don't know. It could be less. I hope they're less for everybody's sake, right? Like I just hope taxes are going to be less in the future. I hope they don't.
Depends
I hope
on
taxes are not.
who's in Congress.
What's that?
I said depends on who's in Congress.
Definitely is going to depend, right? But we don't know. So taxes could be. So when these accounts were invented, invented, right? The tax bracket at that time was like 50% plus. So it made sense to defer your taxes to later, right? So we don't know, but the reality is that they could be more, they could be less. So in the future, let's just say, for example, somebody who lives off of $50,000 now, in the future, they have to live off of $100,000. Like, let's say 30 years from now, someone who, that's very reasonable, right? So now is $100,000. So if each year, right, let's say, for example, I have $1 million now. So I pull out $30,000. I'm sorry, I pull out $100,000 each year. And if I'm just paying 30% in taxes, that means that I'm paying 30,000 in 30K in taxes, right? Let's just keep it simple. But if it's 40,000, if it's 50,000, just depends on what the tax bracket is, right? So over a 10-year, so let's just say over 10 years, you pull out $1 million, that's $300,000 in taxes. Right? Over 20 years, that's $600,000 in taxes. Okay. So if I'm somebody, and let's say that over 20 years, let's say that I was saving $12,000 a year, because that's what I put into my 401k. Not even, most people don't put $1,000 a month. Let's say that they put, let's just say they put $1,000 a month. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They're putting $1,000 a month into their 401k. So for 12,000 a year times 10 years, that's 120,000 times 20 years is 240,000. So if you saved 240,000, you saved, right? But this grew to this $1 million over here, right? You saved 240, but you paid 600. Sometimes when you start looking at what you're saving versus what you're paying, and these are just basic numbers, you can get into more specific situations, but when you start looking at, okay, how much am I paying in taxes, and also how much am I earning versus losing over that period of time, it's not that they're good or bad, right? Because there's times where you have a match, there's times where it makes sense to do it, and I recommend, if you have a 401k with a match, that you absolutely contribute to it. But there also may be options, right? And this is why we don't, when we go in, we set up accounts for people. When we set up accounts, the employees will get the 401ks, but the owners will get the life insurance retirement plans, right? Why? So just kind of to shed some light on taxes. It's not that they're good or bad. Because 401ks are great. Our company does a lot of them. Transamerica is huge when it comes to that. But I want people to understand that if it's just the 401k and taxes are high and you've earned and you've lost a lot, versus if you had an account where you also had an account in addition to your 401k that doesn't have taxes, it has more of a guarantee. Now your eggs are not in one basket. And if the 401k does great and taxes are low and all of that stuff in the future, well, man, you're in a wonderful position. And now you also have your tax exempt account with guarantee. You've got a double bang right there. That's incredible. But if the 401k is all people are depending on and taxes are high and it doesn't really do what it said it's going to do, and we kind of proven that over time, because if you look at the state in which everyone's retiring in, and if you look at the articles on the 401ks and even the inventor of the 401k, there's some question behind whether it can really fulfill on being able to be there and being consistent. Because a lot of the clients, what they're really talking about in the future, what they want to know is that their money is safe. In all of the case studies that we've talked about, they want to know that it's going to be safe. So if we're going to put our money somewhere, it's not that we don't want to put it there, it's that we just don't want to only put it there. I want to be very clear about that, right? So how do 401ks, IRAs, and all of these things work? Like, we say that they earn money. I want to just talk a little bit about that, because we talk about the concepts of like how the life insurance earns, how these stocks, all of this stuff. I want you guys to kind of understand this, because I want you to see how companies make money and how they're investing your money, right? So I want you to understand this. With stocks, how do stocks or mutual funds or How do these 401ks actually work? Let's take a look at that. So if I have a 401k, right, that's through my company, and I take my money and I invest, and let's just say that it's with, I'm just going to put an F here for Fidelity, right? So I let them know, I say, guys, I'm either going to be risky or like high risk, right? Like medium or low. So they're just going to ask me. So when I go to my employer and I set it up, no matter who you work with, you either go online and you set it up, or you sit with your HR person, however you do it, you fill out your paperwork. They're going to ask you, okay, what is your risk tolerance? Are you low, medium, or high? And then you say, okay, I have a very high risk tolerance, okay? So what Fidelity is going to do is they're going to go over here and they're going to say, okay, well, let's say we're going to go ahead and we're going to buy, or we're going to invest into the aggressive fund. And inside the aggressive fund, they're going to have 4 or 5 different type of stocks that have the potential of being very aggressive, which means like they could go up, right? So when we look at it, they could go up, but they could also come down, and they could do like all of these things in between, right? So they could go up and they could go down. So when Fidelity goes and they say, okay, well, you have a high risk, all right, you want to put away $1,000 a month. This is the high risk fund, and we're going to put it into the high risk fund, right? How stocks work is like, stocks go up and they go down. So there's what you call like a trading average of what stocks are trading at over like 60, 90, 120 days, right? It's like 60, 90, 120 days. When these stocks are trading over that, they have times where they're going high, they're going low, they're going up, they're going down, and all this stuff, right? And that's what you'll see. Like you'll say, okay, the stock was at its high point, like Apple. Okay, everyone's like, oh man, like, or let's say Tesla, right? Like at one point, Tesla stocks, like, I don't even know what it is right now, but it's like $700-800, almost like $1,000 a share, right? So let's just say that Tesla is inside this high risk fund. When you tell them that you want to put your money in there, this is just a general fund that nobody manages. What happens is they just go and buy. It doesn't matter if this stock is high, right? Or it doesn't matter if the stock is low. They're not going to sit there and manage where you buy it at. Does that make sense? You picked high risk. The market is, this thing is at $1,000 now. Next week, my high risk fund could drop, and my Tesla stock that was $1,000 is now $500. I don't literally have somebody sitting there saying, okay, I'm going to sell this now so you keep your money, and then we're going to buy it when it's back low. That's not how it works. It just gets put in a general fund, and whatever it does is whatever it does. Somebody doesn't buy, sell, or manage it in that way. It just goes up, it just goes down in that way, right? It's not like somebody's actively managing it. So that's how those funds work. So a lot of times what I tell people is, if you learned a little bit about stocks, and you invested the same amount of money that your company would have invested, right? Let's say your 401k doesn't have a match, because one of the only reasons you'd want to be inside the 401k is for the match. Because if they match you a percentage, that's money. Like if you contribute $200, they match you that $200, whatever percentage it is, then that's free money to you. So no matter what risk or what taxes you're in, you're still in a situation where you're winning, right? Mathematically, you're winning. But if you don't have a match, you don't have a risk or anything like that, you could be better off to actually invest your money on your own, just learning a little bit about stocks, and you would have a 401k is returning 5, 6, 7%, maybe 8% on average over a long period of time. You could definitely do more just by looking at that and seeing. You could even see what stocks they invest in, right? Within that fund, invest in the same stocks, but just buy it when it's low, sell it when it's high, and continue to do that process, and you would be essentially managing your own money and making way more than if you were to put it inside of a 401k. But not everybody has the time to do that. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants, but I think it's good that people at least understand how their money is being invested, because there's so many times where people will say, do you even know how a 401k works? They have no idea. They just put their money there. It just does what it does. It's high conservative or medium risk. And then hopefully everything's going to be okay. Not understanding how their money is earning or losing, not understanding the tax implications, or even if they're going to be able to get to where they want to be, right? All right. We talked about some stuff today. I'm going to open it up for some questions. What questions do you guys have? What would you guys like to talk about? What are your thoughts? And then we're going to end training here in the next, after we're done with questions. Everyone's good? Nobody has questions? Is it making sense?
I have
Yes.
a question.
Yes, Miss Alice.
Now that is because I'm ignorant as always. So when we, so for example, through 401ks, so if say the employer is taking charge of managing your fund, let's say the money is there, it goes up or it goes down, whatever. So let's assume that you are managing it yourself and you've been doing so well. When it comes to the final taxation, what is it based on? Is it the final funds there or what it would have been?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's going to depend on how you were growing the money. If you were growing the money inside of then your money is going to be taxed later. So let's say, for example, you have your 401k, right? And you have your $1 million in your 401k. This is what you have saved for retirement. You will be taxed whatever the tax rate is according to what you pull out at that time. So if you pull out 50,000 and the tax rate is 30%, then you will pay 30% of this 50,000, and that's how it works. So it's only, but if the money is not being pulled out of there until you're 72 and a half, then they're going to force you to start pulling your money out, because now they want to recuperate their taxes because you've deferred them. Now they want their taxes, so you'll have to pull it out in the future. Now, if you grew your money the other way through managing it yourself, like through stocks or things like that, if you leave it in there for more than a year, then you're paying long-term capital gains tax, which, don't quote me on this, somewhere between 10 and 30%, just depending. And then short gain capital gain taxes a little bit higher than that, or somewhere around that range. So you're either going to pay taxes now as you're earning money and cashing it out, or you're going to pay taxes later as it accumulates into a large lump sum as you distribute it, or we're going to put money into something over here, which we'll talk about in the tax never vehicle. And you still pay taxes on your income, but you're not paying taxes on the growth or distribution. So those are some things that can help out with a little bit more of a guarantee when it comes to how your money is earning. Does that answer your question, Alice, or did I go completely off topic?
No, you have. It just makes me want to ask more, but
yes, continue, please. You guys, there's no questions here that are silly questions, because everything here should, like, whatever's on your mind or needs to be discussed, this is a safe environment for us to learn and for us to, I just went into the dark. Let me,
I'm not the teacher, but I want to point out something.
yes, go ahead, Ken.
Not disagreeing with anything you've said, is that in the
Sure.
estate planning I do, a lot of times I make recommendations to people to take their tax later items and use them as either gifts or to help fund charitable trust, because just because you die doesn't mean that there's no more taxes due on any of those things. Those taxes on all those things will follow you into the grave. So and you can't pass the money on to your heirs. They'll have to pay the taxes on them. So-
when you have them inside of the like 401ks and things like that.
Right, the
Mhm.
tax later bracket.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That's
When they
yeah.
say
No, you're
tax later,
correct.
they really mean it.
Yeah,
So,
I would
and
say
they've been
then-
waiting, so they want it. Go ahead, Shannon.
when you were talking and explaining to Alice about when you mentioned briefly RMDs, required minimum distribution, if we were to leave the money there to give to our heirs and we don't need to live off of it, at 70, when they make us start taking our dispersals on it, there's something that I did. There's a couple different clients I've had, so I've done the numbers. On average, the money will be exhausted by age between 81 and 83. If you
Yeah, you're right.
so one way or another,
Yeah,
Uncle Sam wants his portion and he will make
yeah.
it happen.
That's right. When what Shannon's saying is by 72 and a half, you have to start pulling out a certain portion, right? Percentage each year. Otherwise, if you don't pull that out, it's required because they want you to pay your taxes now, that you're going to have to pay a 50% tax penalty on the amount that you should have pulled out. So, and then another thing is there's a lot of times people don't have trust or different things, or just the average Americans or families or just people that are out there that only know about 401ks and they're saving there and they're really depending on it. And trust me, they're not bad. I've seen people do great with their 401ks. I'm just saying that if people had more knowledge of how money really worked and other options, that they could diversify more and maybe save more and not create more tax liabilities or risk down the road. And I saw this when I worked a lot with Wells Fargo. I saw where the banks are putting their money. I saw where big corporations just and even with through WFG and doing things with business owners and being around like and seeing the plans that some of these guys throughout the hierarchy put together for football players and basketball players and owners and stuff. And you start to see that there's just a different education. There's a different way that money is set up. There's a different knowledge and understanding of these products when someone takes the time to actually do it. So I think that we'll continue to go through this. We're going to talk about some of the rules. We're going to talk a little bit more about how they earn. And we're going to get into just learning this. And then from there, you guys are going to be the ones presenting this. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the bank, right? So how you present the bank, you can watch these. And then we're going to talk about how we do the tax later. So you having the knowledge of these few items, you already know how to ask questions through selling through curiosity. You already know how to go through the flip chart. The flip chart is not you with the most elaborate presentation. It's just you explaining a few concepts that resonate with the client based off of what they've said and the questions you've asked. And then this is how you're going to close products out. And there's one for when people are investing their money. There's one for insurance. And then there's a few concepts that you can write out, or a napkin, what we call like napkin presentations, to help people to understand how money works and how money grows. I want to put a poll out. I want you guys to figure out, is Wednesday the best night? We got to meet at least once a week together as a team, but if Wednesday night, if maybe Tuesday or Thursday night's better. And I want to see for our East Coast and Central people, if maybe a 6 or 6:30 time would work. So if we could get a poll, what's the best night for everyone to make it on training? Is it Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? And what's the best time for everyone? Is it 6, 6:30, or 7 p.m. Pacific time, to kind of help out our Central and East Coast people, right? Let's do that. And let's commit to that time. And we're going to make them quick. We're going to make them efficient. But the real work is always in the field. Kat and I have been building a lot of new relationships, going out there, meeting a lot of new people, just getting out and helping people. And we've sat with people and we're doing F&As and we're putting plans together and we're meeting with them on our own personal stuff. And I think that's really awesome. But we can teach you guys how to do that. We can show you guys. I want this to be interactive. I want there to be as many questions, and I want there to be things that you guys want to learn and things you want to go over. A lot of the learning comes from you doing it, from being involved in it. So other questions, other concerns, other comments, anything else you guys want to bring up? Good. Thank you all for being on with us. Let's get out there. Let's help some families, book some appointments. I challenge each one, go out and just help one family this month. If you can do more than that, great. You can help one family a week. That's awesome. But just make it your goal to say, hey, I want to help one family this month, and not even like an outcome, right? I want to help one family like have a plan, be educated, at least put an F&A together, put something in place, give them some education, do something good. Let's go out there and make a difference. You guys are incredible. Thank you for spending your time on this Wednesday evening. Love you guys. God bless you. Great health. And to all of you and to your families. Appreciate you guys. Good night.